Oh well, hello. Here we are, building tips part 3. Tips and tricks and parts in 3. The number 3. The third one. Yeah. So yeah, I'm about a week late on this video because I've just been heavily demotivated, but I mean, at least I finally got it out. Although I still feel like the video is kinda low quality. I try to at least explain stuff the best I can, so as long as you're learning something, I'm happy. And today's topic, medieval house. Yeah, not really going into interior stuff, mostly just exterior. And also, if you're wondering, the reason that I had to re-record this video was because the first time I recorded it, the way I explained how to make the house, it just sucked. And even though this isn't that much better, I mean, it's still at least more helpful than the original one. Oh yeah, I'm turning these into shorts now instead of full-length videos, so they'll just be covering like one small topic at a time. Alright, yeah, I hope you learned something. Hooray, yip yip. Oh, and again, if you haven't, I'd recommend watching at least the first video of the series. Okay, so it's like my second time recording this. Hooray. In fact, I got so demotivated that I started building doors. Okay, house. So let's start with foundation. If you already have a solid foundation, like say like a sidewalk or something, you don't really need an extra foundation. I usually only make these kind of foundations for like if the house is going to be placed on grass or something. So there's a foundation. I guess I can make it like a little bit smaller. Alright, this is a reference I'm gonna be using, and the reference that I've already used for a previous house. So now we do the walls. Now I'm gonna tell you a little build hack. Another little tip. Yeah. Alright, so you know how like you'll use the clone feature for something for just like a single block, and it'll automatically place it on like the grid you have set. I normally don't change my grid because I don't really need to. The point is that like this is just a normal 4x4x4 block, and it'll perfectly be placed on the grid. However, if I were to scale this one down one increment and then place it, it's still the same size, but it also doesn't line up with either of these sides. So it's like a middle block. So like this red one is 2 increments. This one is only 1. So like it's just straight in the middle, if that makes any sense. I'm mentioning this because it helps a lot for like detailing thin walls. Most of the time I have my walls only 2 increments, like this. Oh, I just deleted the base. So since I normally have my walls really thin like this, and I usually like to add a lot of wall detail, instead of just doing it like this, where I just make the wall detail like just go out 1 increment, and that makes it really thick, you can use parts like these, and it gives you just like it gives you the same amount of depth, kinda, but your walls can also stay fairly thin. So it's a good technique. Alright, so now I'm gonna start with the wooden pillars, which are going to be 4 increments like this, which is a single stud. Good enough. You know what, that's terrible. And then since these are placed directly on the grid, you can clone them and place them every few blocks. These ones I have spaced every other block, but like you can do it more. I wouldn't recommend doing it less, but you can if you want. And this is how I have my wall set up. No, I should probably do height now, actually. You can honestly decide the height for yourself, but I have a very specific way of making the height of my buildings. Okay, first, I place 3 blocks. Basically, every 3 blocks is a different floor. And then the bottom of these blocks will be the floors, and then the top are the roofs. I hope that makes sense. Alright, so here's the ceiling, here's the floor. I have these beams that will go on top of these pillars here, and I have them positioned so that they're like in the middle of these, then 1 more up, so they're 1 stud vertically. And then I take all the pillars, I adjust their height to be just under this. And then I add this beam on all of the other pillars. Or well, all the other sides. Just like that. Hooray! And if you want, you can add extra beams, such as like right here, but I usually never do that, so up to you. And I also don't really need this anymore. Well, I'll keep this one. And now we start designing the walls. Alright, here's where that little technique is going to come into play again. Alright, so I have this block as 3 total increments, which is 1 under a stud. So yeah, as you can see, it's offset from these. And I'm going to stretch that to be pretty much the length of this wall. Actually, the door is going to be here, so I'm actually going to separate this one. And then you grab all these and you put them all the way down. And actually, you know what? Since this level is going to be the floor level, I'm actually going to bring them up 1 more. And then I'm also going to grab all these again. I'm going to bring them up to this block and then push them 4 down. And that'll create like a little second ring kind of thing. Yeah. I guess also by now you can add the wall, which I'm going to leave these 2 blank for now because we're going to put some windows there. And then this one on the back, I'm going to scale it to be the length of the whole wall. And then again, texture, could be anything you want. I usually use slate, you can use concrete, you can use a granite, you can use rock. But yeah, I prefer sticking to like the older textures. And there you go, rock wall. I'm going to place a block there, and I'm going to duplicate these railing things. I don't even know what to call them. And this time I'm going to have them actually to the bottom of the block, and then 1 more up. And yeah, looks good. And then when I think about it, I'm actually going to make these 2 increments as well. Alright, so yeah, you got some extra design to the wall, but we can do a little better. Alright, so I'm going to take 3 of these. I'm going to position the ones on the side 2 increments from these poles, and then 1 in the middle, and scale them down to be under this beam, and then I'm going to duplicate them across all of the walls. You know what, now that I'm thinking about it, I think these are actually too high. That's why I thought it looked kind of weird. Alright, I'm just going to move them like 2 increments down. Bruh. Alright, that's a little better. There's one more thing we can do. So I'll place 2 more of these. And then I move them... Well, I mean, there kind of isn't a middle. Like, I don't know, you can have it 1 higher, you can have it 1 lower, you can have it directly in the middle if you want to move it, or move these down 1 more increment. Looks good to me though, so I'm gonna keep it. And yeah, this is kind of just like one of a lot of different ways you can design your walls. All I really want to say is try to be creative, do your own thing. Again, these videos are kind of just meant to be like a little guide to at least get you up there, I guess. Anyway, yeah, you can design the bottom like this, you can design it differently, you can design the entire wall differently, up to you. Do one more thing, I'll make that as thin as it can be. Then, so it's a little different from the bottom, they're thinner. This top is also longer in height than the bottom. Alright, I guess now, let's do the door. Alright, I got some concrete here. I'm gonna have another half a step gap, and then you can kind of just make it as high as you want. I usually don't care. And then for the curve at the top, first, take this back out, and look at that. You already have the setup to do that 1 circle method. I'm actually going to make these a 1/4 stud gap instead. And then once you got the circle, you can delete all of this. Don't delete these, you'll need that. And then just bring these back down. Ta-da! Doorway. And then the walls you can also bring in. Also make sure there's no gaps. Alright, so I just placed this part up here, and as you can see, there's still a little bit of a gap there. And 2 more. So I can place 1 over here, the other one on this side. And now there are no gaps. So now you have a very cool doorway. Hooray! Anyway, for the door, pretty much like the same thing. Oh wait, actually, one more thing. I have a block with the wood plank texture under it, like this. Which just kind of like gives the door something to rest on, instead of just the floor. You know, speaking of the floor, this isn't even the floor, this is the foundation. So let's actually add the floor real quick, which again I usually use the plank texture for. Okay, now let's make the rest of the door. Alright, so for this part, if you want to like have your doors actually be two separate doors, you would want to separate this middle part into two different parts that are the same length. They meet up in the middle, just like that. It also means you would want to separate this part up here. And then I just added these two parts, which again, they're separate from each other, so that there's actually two doors. You could also just have this be like one whole door, like, and you don't have to have these here. Or if you're the kind of person to have doors that just have collision off, you don't even have to do all the extra parts, unless you want to actually like open them and whatnot. Then once again, you want to have two separate parts. Can I scale this correctly? And then for curved doors like this, you'll run into the problem where if you just scale up to the top, there's going to be this little bit of wood poking out. There's a very simple fix to this, which is just scaling this wood down so that there's nothing sticking out, and then you duplicate it, you bring it back up to fill the rest in, and then you simply scale these in again so that there's nothing poking out and that there's also no gap inside the door. If you want, you could go even crazier with the detail, and then of course you can select your whole door and have it like kind of cracked open like this. Usually I make my doors destructible, although that does kind of remove collision because of the current bug. Still works though. And then again, with the door, you can like change the shape, change the style, change door. You can make it like a gate if you want. Anyway, time for the windows, my not entirely worst nightmare. Alright, so once again, you take a piece of wood, and then you want to find your window level, is what I'm calling it. Usually it's just 4 increments down. What I mean by window level is kind of just like the level at which your windowsill, or like just the bottom of your window should be at, and usually this works for me. So in this case, that's 1 increment above this railing. How wide your window is pretty much just kind of up to you. I wouldn't really recommend connecting your window, like the glass part, to the pillars, since it doesn't always look good. And then also like how tall your window is, again, up to you. I just have a single block. And now we get to get into all the cool, fun, crazy stuff. Yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna take one of these middle parts again, and then actually make it just 1 increment. I'm gonna have 2 of them, and they're just gonna sit on the sides here. So that's 1, 2, 3 total. And I'm gonna take just some normal blocks. I'm gonna place them so that the center of these blocks are on the edge of these blocks. And then once I have both of them set, rotate them 45 degrees. In counting, that's 9 increments. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 45. Kind of feels too tall. Maybe that's just me. I'm gonna bring this like 2 down. Alright, there. Now we can actually start scaling the walls in. So for these, you'll want to bring them probably to here. Yeah, you don't want to have them clipping on this side. So if there's like a gap here, that doesn't really matter. And then of course that means you're going to want to place one of these in the center here. And then you want to take 2 more and place them above and below the windows. Now to further detail the windows, or I guess like the frame of the window. For the top and bottom, I'm going to round off these edges. I mean, it's not really rounding off, but it's like half rounding off. Okay, so you position these so that they're on the corner of this. It's that one rotation technique for corners. And then you go 45 degrees. And then you scale them to be like that. And then, hooray! It looks a little bit cooler. And then you pretty much just want to do that on all the corners. And I guess I'll also just move this back up. Yeah, you'll make a lot of those decisions where like, you'll decide, oh, I'm gonna do this instead, but then you'll go back to what you originally did. Anyway, yeah, look, cool window frame. Alright, now you take this, and then you decide that it looks bad. So you go make it a little bit darker. You take it again, it still looks kind of bad, but you use it anyway, because like, whatever, it's just a tutorial. Oh, wait, actually, make it 1 increment thin like this, so it'll become, it'll be placed in the middle. And you make 2 of them, on either side, and then you could leave it like that, or you could actually start adding some detail to it. Alright, so to start, I'm actually going to make it so that there is a gap on the top and bottom. Then I'm going to duplicate these again, bring them to the top and bottom, 2 increments. Then I'm going to add the sides, the sides, and then you add in these every other increment. Now I'm actually going to modify the window a bit. Alright, there. Made it so that there's a little bit of a gap in the middle. Again, up to you if you want it. I wanted it, so I made it. Looks cool. Yeah. And one last thing that you can do is grab one of these and then just like rotate it a bit. Just some extra little detail. And then of course you want to do that on all the other windows. Now you could just manually build this on each and every window. That would be kind of time consuming. So instead what you would probably do is just select the whole thing, duplicate it, and move it over. This is also pretty good. However, if you're one of those people who wants absolute perfection, then you place a block here and you scale it so that the ends are to these sides of the poles. Again, you select the window, but then you also select this, and then you bring that over here and just slowly keep moving it forward until you figure out the perfect spot. And then you pretty much just do the same thing, but of course you instead bring it over here and then rotate it 180 degrees. I mean, you really only need to rotate it if you have like a thing where it's like these windows are rotated outwards to the outside, so it'll be like that on all the windows. Well, anyway, in the end, hopefully you have some cool looking windows. Well, I mean, I guess that's kind of the first floor done. Let's get to the second floor. Alright, so to start, first duplicate these. Basically, you grab these beams and then you move them outwards. And then I'm going to have a 1 stud gap in between this block and the next beam. And once you've done that, you want to make them actually connect, and you can also delete these blocks. And if I bring this back from earlier, this is the floor, this is the ceiling. It still perfectly lines up. Which I guess I'll actually do the whole floor and ceiling thing now. Alright, so take a wood type, maybe lighter, doesn't have to be, depends on how noticeable you want it to be. I have 2 of them, they're both 4 increments, 1 stud. I'm going to have these placed at the ceiling level, so 2 down, 1 up. I'm gonna make it span across the floor, and then 1 in. So they're now 3 increments in total, which leaves this little tiny gap, and it makes it look like actual 3D planks. You could also use the plank texture, but I'm also going to use the same texture for the flooring of the second floor, so it's nice to just have a different texture for these planks. Anyway, you pretty much just want to grab this and keep duplicating it across the entire house. You also might have some extra, so make sure to get rid of those. And there we go, cool little plank design. Now when you grab your planks, or I guess this is really only specifically for if you're using planks, it would probably look better to have the plank texture rotated so that it's not facing the same way as these planks. And now we actually have to make a way to get up here. Alright, so I'm going to carve out this little section here. Alright, and then now you'll have to do that same thing for the planks here. And now you got a little hole. Now for this house, I'm just going to add like a ladder, like right here. If you want, you could add like stairs on the side or like this back wall. And then you don't have to have like this big hole in the middle, you can just have like a hole in this little area right here. And just one more little thing, these you can actually scale down 2 increments so that they're not like in the way there. They're still at the bottom, they're just not noticeable from the second floor. What is Z fighting? Where did you come from? And then I'm gonna take this block again, and I'm just gonna make it so that these edges aren't like visible like that. Just makes it look nicer. Alright, next I'm gonna add these railings. Then I grab a different wood color. And then I'm also just gonna make a pretty simple ladder. But I actually just like created the Minecraft ladder. Anyway, since a lot of people kind of don't know how to climb ladders in TSB, I would recommend rotating it like at least one increment and then just making sure it's actually like resting on the wood correctly. I did say that every floor usually is 3 blocks, but this time I'm gonna make it so that it's actually 4 blocks. While you're placing the pillars for the second floor, you may notice that the corners are gonna be a little further from the rest of the pillars. This doesn't really like mean anything, but it might bother you. If it does, you can try to like move these a little bit over to try and make the gap between them the same. However, I don't care, so I'm not gonna do anything about it. Anyway, I'm gonna take these again, gonna move them up to here again. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, and there you go, second floor. And now here is one of my more favorite techniques that I think is really cool. Alright, so you take one of these planks, then you put it perfectly in the center, you stretch it to the wall's length, and then you have 2 of them, which are both 1 set in height, and then you keep on duplicating them until they're at the top of the building, and then you have this. Now, currently, this is just like the normal texture. You could have done this with 1 part, but the reason I did this is so you can do this cool little thing where you rotate them like 2 increments or something. It makes this cool little 3D effect with the planks, and it looks really cool, and it's cool, and it looks cool. There you go. And you know what, from now on, the video is gonna get like 10 times more lazy, because like, I don't really need to do this on every side just to teach you how to do this. So I'm just gonna focus on the front from now on. And with the second floor, you pretty much just do the same thing you did with the first floor. So you like design the walls and stuff. So I'm just gonna give you a few more examples on stuff you can do. So now we actually have 5 in total. And then with these ones, I'm gonna duplicate them. So I'll have these little parts, 1 off to each side, and I'm gonna rotate them so that they will connect to this corner, which seems to be 8, I think. Once again, another cool little design. And then you're probably also gonna wanna put some windows on these walls. Alright, so for windows, where there's gonna be like these planks inside of them, for most of these you can just like scale them so that they're not inside the actual window frame. And there's also some where there's this little bit peeking out. It's not really that worth it to like go through all the effort to fix it. Unless it like bothers you that much, then I guess you could fix it. But these are the real issue. Alright, first thing you want to do is, again, duplicate it. So now there's 2 planks here, and you just want to scale this as far as you can without it actually peeking out into the window frame, and also making sure there's no gap. I seem to have gotten lucky here. I thought I was gonna have to add like 1 more extra part, but looks like that's all I have to do. So then you do it on the other side, and then also in the middle. This mainly occurs for windows with like curves and stuff. This isn't like a big curve, but if you were to make it like a big curve, then you would want to keep that in mind. Yeah, for second floor shenanigans, that's really all there is to say. Just go design stuff, add like those little X things. Alright, so I found the exact middle of this square here. Oh no, the exact middle would actually be right here. And then there you go. You got the thing. Ta-da. The only other thing I can like say for extra details is just making these little like knob things on the sides here. And then you can take that and just like put it on all the other corners. Yeah, just more cool little details. Alright, now you could build your roof like completely different. You could do different can do. It could be different from the way I do it, but here's how I do it. So I grab these parts, I line them up to the corner, and then you grab this, and you go in like 7 or 8. I would do 8 if the width of the building is a lot bigger. Anyway, after you did both of them, scale them back like this so that it's 1 stud, and you can pretty much just bring them up however much you would like. And then you'll want to do that corner technique, but instead do it on the inside, and then go outward too. And once again, scale them back to be pillars. And if you want, you could do like one more, but usually 2 is enough for me. You want to scale them up so that they're about to here, so that this won't like peek out on this side. And then you'll actually want to grab another block and then put this one in the middle. This will also be 1 stud. So this will be like the tip of your roof pretty much. And then you take this and you just bring it to the other side. Looking pretty cool. If you want, you could add like extra in the middle so that they'll like line up with these other pillars. You can even duplicate these and then make some pillars that go across here. This is all pretty much just optional. It'll make it look cooler because like roof structure is pretty cool. Yeah, cool looking roof. However, we are obviously not done yet. First, I'm going to add some more of these to add like a overhang kind of thing. I'm gonna have a 1 stud gap there, and then on the other side. And then you also want to connect this top beam to both of these. And then you want to take just these side ones, the ones that aren't connected to the frame, and then you can move them down a little more, like 2 or maybe 4 increments. And then you want to align these to the corner. A lot of the time I just make them like straight up flat. You don't have to, you can make them like... And then I gotta do that on the other side. And then yeah, cool roof. Gonna do a few extra things with all the beams and pillars here. Okay, just separated these and then added this part up here. Oh, and then of course I scaled these up here. Alright, now we gotta actually like fill in the roof. But I'm just gonna duplicate these. And then I'm gonna move them in 1 on each side. So now they're like in the middle of their parts. And then I just drag them across. But yeah, also you can take the planks here and fill them in. You could also do a completely different technique. Like, you could either use this same technique and then just scale them in as the roof goes in, or this is the technique used in the reference, or at least like that's what it looks like in the reference, where you will alternate between the plank texture and the wood texture, which are also have different depths. And then you would just keep on duplicating up to the top, and then of course you would have to take all of these and then scale them in as you go up. So yeah, if this is a kind of technique you would want to do, you can do that, or figure out something for your own. Pretty much all you have left is just to do the roof, or well, the tiles. So to make the roof tiles, I pretty much just use the same method I used for the planks, like on the walls here. Alright, so you take your little roof tiles, you'll place them up here. It should be 1 stud in this vertical length. And then I have them hang off by 1 increment. And then once you have that, you start by scaling this all the way down. And instead of moving this like 1 more down so that it's not clipping with this, you actually leave it there and then just make this 1 stud in length, which will have Z-fighting, but we'll get to that. Also, if you don't want Z-fighting on the edges, then you might want to move this over a little bit. And then you just keep doing that all the way down. I have a little technique I want to show you later, so I'm not going to do the other side. And then eventually you'll get to the part where you get to this other rotation, and really pretty much all you have to do is just like take the next part down, rotate it so that it's aligned with this pillar. Sometimes this bottom one won't be like perfectly aligned with this, so you can just kind of like rotate it at a random angle if you want. And then eventually you'll get all the way down, and then you can start this other lengthy process of individually rotating all of these, 1 by 1. Worth it though. And also sometimes I'll rotate the last one like 3 instead of 2. And then there you go, you got one side done. Okay, now here's how to instantly transfer all of this to the other side. Alright, so take a block about here, and you get that same block in the same place. The center of these 2 blocks does have to be in the center of the roof here for it to truly work. And then I'm just gonna make these a little bit bigger. You have all your tiles selected, select these 2, duplicate and rotate it a whole 180 degrees. Ta-da! And yeah, there you go. That's how to make a house. A cool medieval house. Like if you want, you can add extra roofs. I guess the idea for this one with that is that there would be like an extra room here, and then there would be a roof right here, basically. So yeah, you can make it an extra roof here. You can do it on both sides. Extra little details, cool stuff. If you figure out how to do the roof structure pretty well, it'll be a lot easier. And I'm also gonna make I also might make a little advanced tutorial specifically on roof structure. That will be a short though, since I'm turning these into shorts after this. Well, alright, there's your 3rd building tips and tricks tutorial. Honestly, the only reason I made this is because people kept asking for like a 3rd one, and I was planning on just turning these into shorts, but I haven't done that yet, so I decided why not make one more last long form video before I turn them into shorts. I don't know what my first tips and tricks short will be, but like, stay tuned for it, for real. Also, I might actually be starting a Satisfactory series, but that all kind of just depends on how active my friends will be. And also, it shouldn't affect the upload schedule of like other videos, so if you're not interested in Satisfactory at all, you shouldn't have to worry about that. Anyway, yeah, pretty much it. Like, subscribe, comment something meaningless, or end the series right here and now.